Good evening, everyone. Welcome to City Hall. My name is Eric Murray. I am the president of Cascadia College here in Bothell, and I am tonight's moderator for the City of Bothell City Council Candidates Forum. So I have an introduction to go through and outline what tonight's going to be about, and then we'll get into our questions. I want to thank all of the candidates who were able to make it tonight for showing up and being prepared for tonight's event. I also want to thank the audience for being here. Just to let everybody know, we are being filmed, and on the cable TV channel, you can go back and probably look at us 100 times if you want to hear the answers over again. Tonight's forum is brought to you by the Greater Bothell Chamber of Commerce. We did this in Kenmore last month and had a really great turnout, and also got to hear from their candidates, since the Chamber of Commerce serves both cities, both Bothell and Kenmore. We also want to appreciate and thank the city for letting us use the facilities tonight, including the taping of the forum. Thanks to the Chamber for providing this opportunity. And we also want to mention that we solicited over the last few weeks questions from the community. So some of those have been incorporated into tonight's presentation and event. We also have the opportunity for the audience members who are here tonight to ask more questions. I'll explain how we do that in just a second. Our purpose tonight is to provide an opportunity for each of the candidates to introduce themselves to the public and express your thoughts in response to a set of questions. I would like to introduce the candidates who are here today. For position 1, Jeanne Zornes. Her family calls her Jeannie. You can call her Jeanne or Jeannie, as I've been explained. And you are running unopposed tonight. Next to you, for position 5, is Liam Olsen. Also running for position 5, but who could not make it tonight, is Jeremy Michael. So we are grateful that you could be here with us today, Liam. For position 3, we have candidates Rosemary McAuliffe and Vicky Sompi. And for position 7, Thomas E. Agnew. You told me I could call you whatever I wanted. And Aaron Morrow Cook. So thank you to all of you for being here tonight. So let's kind of go over the format and the rules for the forum, and then we'll begin with our questions. We're going to begin the forum with an introductory statement by each of you. I'll tell you how much time you have for each question or each statement when we get to that place in tonight's event. And during your introduction, we ask that you tell the audience about your history in the Bothell community and about your vision and goals for the city. So your history in Bothell and your vision and goals for the city. After that, we're going to go through a set of questions, rotating through the candidates so that everybody has an opportunity to respond first. Over the years, we've gotten quite good at mixing up the order of things so that everybody gets a chance to go first and starting at different places on the panel. The responses will be time limited, and we have a timekeeper. Again, I'll explain that in just a second. And for some of the questions, we will have all of the candidates answer the same question. For other questions, we will do it by position. So position 7 will be given a question, position 3 will be given one, and we've kind of lumped positions 1 and 5 together, although you're not running against each other, still for you, so that we can balance everything evenly. There are a lot of questions that we have. We will be soliciting more questions and trying to fill up our 2 hours tonight. We also have a lightning round. You've been given yes or no cards, and that will take about a minute to get through that. But let's practice. If you heard what I just said, let me know. Okay, there we go. If you didn't hear what I said, let me know. No. All right. Let's see what else we need to talk about. We are going to be asking that if you would like to submit a question for tonight's forum, you can do so outside. There are cards and pens. The audience can write a question. We ask that you submit those questions by 7:30. If we get any additional questions beyond what we have prepared tonight, we will be collecting those, going through them, making sure that they are brief and clear, and we will try to incorporate them at the very last segment of tonight's event. After we're done with questions, everybody will have a closing statement. During that closing statement, if you feel that there's an issue that we didn't raise or something more that you want to discuss about your candidacy, that's the opportunity to do it during your closing statement. We have a timekeeper. He is the chair of the Board of Directors of the Chamber of Commerce, right here, Mike Rue. I'm also going to give him an opportunity to practice tonight. So when you have, how much time do they have left when the yellow card goes up? 30 seconds. Okay, when you have 30 seconds left, whether it's a 1-minute answer or a 2-minute answer, you'll see this. When you have no time left, you will see this. It's my job to be very gracious and to cut you off when the red card goes up. But I do apologize up front because I know one of you is going to go over the red card. It always happens. So it'll be my job to say, thank you very much. And you can help me out by putting that period on before the red card goes up. For the audience, I hope that you will listen intently. We also ask that you refrain from applause or any other indication of preference for the candidate. Tonight is not a debate. Tonight is a forum where we get to listen to our candidates, where we get to hear their positions, whether you agree with them or disagree with them. Those opinions come out at the ballot. So we ask that you just listen intently to the things that they have to say tonight, and that helps us not have the forum completely get out of hand or lean one way or the other. And for the candidates, I ask that you enter this fair-minded, open-minded, that you also keep your responses succinct. You do have time limits, and that we in the Chamber of Commerce don't accept personal attacks on other candidates. These are your opinions and how you perceive the questions and what you would do, not an attempt to dismiss your opponent and what he or she might do. Everybody good with that? All right. That means we can get underway. So, Mike, are you ready with the time? All right. Opening statements. Everybody gets 2 minutes to talk about your history in Bothell and your vision for the city. And it might be nice if you also tell us how long you've lived in the city as well. So we are going to start position 1. Jeanne, you get to go first, and I invite you to begin.
Okay, my name's Jeanne Zornes, and we moved here to Bothell in 1986, and we raised our 5 children here. My background is I have a bachelor's in audiology and a master's of education in special ed, deaf focus. Over the years, I've participated in numerous committees and boards, educational related. One of them was with the North Shore School District Networks program, and my solitary claim to fame on that is coming up with the name for it. Also, something that I've participated in for over 10 years is the Traffic Advisory Committee that involves the campuses, both campuses, and the city and the neighborhoods, and we talk about issues of those 2 worlds or 3 worlds melding, and how we can best make those solutions happen so we can all do what we need to do. Why I am running? I'm running because I see a change that's been happening in Bothell where people are being heard, and that matters. That people continue to be heard. Every time I'm at a door, I ask people to hold our feet to the fire, and that means a lot. And seeing new faces come before City Council means a lot. And also I see issues that we really need to get proactive about, and probably one of those is affordable housing. And so I have a hyper focus on affordable housing and issues of retaining trees. One other activity that I was involved in was daylighting Horse Creek, which I thought was pretty significant for the city. So having a balance and hearing people's voices is important.
Thank you. And I would have to say that I was negligent in one of my duties, but Rosemary did a very subtle and gracious job of reminding me that if I could ask everybody in the audience to silence your cell phones. And so thank you, Rosemary, for reminding me about that. That was my fault. I was supposed to remind everybody. So, all right, next up, Liam, 2 minutes. I'm going to ask you to be closer to the microphone, please.
Should turn it on first.
Okay.
So, even better. So my name is Liam Olsen. I grew up in the north end of first in Shoreline, then Linwood, graduated from Linwood High School, eventually moved to Bothell in 2004 over by Country Village, the whole new Safeway complex over there. And then in 2010, I started becoming involved with the city. I joined the Landmark Preservation Board. And really, through that, I found out how much history Bothell has and just the rich fabric and culture that we have, how connected we are to the Sammamish River and the lake. So I really valued that point, or that ability to interact with the city, and I felt that I could get involved more. And so some of my vision for the city is to preserve kind of the small town feel with kind of the real connection to nature. I think we're building a little too fast, a little too big. I'd like to be more thoughtful on that. Some of the goals is to improve traffic, transportation for all modes of transportation. I'm a civil engineer. I work on transportation projects, so that's what I do every day. So I think I could definitely add some expertise. And so there's no magic bullet, but I think incrementally we can improve traffic, improving our connection within the region, and getting our support from all our regional partners. Thank you.
Thank you. Rosemary, 2 minutes.
Thank you and good evening. I'm Rosemary McAuliffe. My husband Jim and I have lived in Bothell for 55 years. We remember well when we were a farming community and that all the families gathered together and celebrated the fact that we lived in the small town of Bothell. We raised our family of 5 boys and 1 girl and many other children at our home. And it was such a privilege because the community was safe. It was a safe place to live and a safe place to work and to gather. I want to preserve that same culture for our families in Bothell today. I think it's really important that we keep the small town feel, that we have the history of Main Street, and that we have retain our history. So if you go on 101st and Main Street, you will see the history of Bothell on a mural. My house is painted on the very top of the hill. It's a log house. And many people in this audience helped us paint this mural. It has from the 4th of July parade all the way down to the boats in the slough. So make sure you enjoy that as well. I'm excited to run for Bothell City Council. I have spent 35 years of my last few years on serving my community. 14 years on North Shore School Board, which I am very proud to say we have one of the finest school districts in this state, and also 24 years in the Washington State Senate, where I was able to do many things that were helpful for the city of Bothell. I think some of the things that I have done over time is bringing the University of Washington Bothell and Cascadia Community College to our town. There was quite a battle over who was going to get that, and we did get it. My goals are to continue my work that I have done so far to help Bothell become what it is. And I want to retain the culture of Bothell. I want to be able to serve Snohomish County as well as King County so that they have open spaces and parks and places where the community can gather. I also believe it's really important to attract and retain small businesses and to connect University of Washington and Cascadia College to Main Street and our senior center as well. So finally, I will always have an open door.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Vicki, next.
Hi, I'm Vicki Sompe. Jack and I moved back to the South Snohomish County area in 1990. We'd been out of the state and abroad for 8 years. And it was not only time to move home, we had 2 young children that had been born here, and we lifted them up and moved them around the world a little bit and brought them back and said, hey, you know, we deliberately chose Bothell when we had the choice to come home and take a quick look. Of course, we happened to do it at the top of the market at that time, and we only had a selection of 2 houses that would work for our family. One was in Bothell. It was Dr. Ricketts' former house, and the other was up in Maltby, and we looked at each other and went, Bothell. It was not a hard choice at all for us because Bothell had a community that still had an identity in our area, which a lot of our cities had lost. It was really easy for us because the North Shore schools offered the programs that we knew our kids had started in, and we wanted them to thrive in them, which they have. It was also because this was our home, and we wanted our kids to grow up in a community that had that center to it, and we were able to do that here. We also appreciated the location, being close to Seattle, being close to the things we love to do in the environment. It was really important to us. I joined the Landmark Board as soon as we had the annexation, and I've been part of the community development in saving parks, creating parks, working on projects for over 25 years in the city of Bothell. And it's been a real privilege to work with the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom.
Good evening. Excuse me. My name is Tom Agnew. My wife and I moved here in 1982. There were 8,000 people that lived in Bothell back then. It's changed a little, just a little. At that time, I was a paramedic down the south end, and then I lateraled up to the shoreline paramedic program to be closer to Bothell because the ALS provider in here in Bothell is Shoreline Fire Department. I worked there till about 2005, and then I decided to retire. Went and I did some consulting here and there, and we did some great stuff. We increased resuscitation rates from cardiac arrest by about 20%, so that was kind of cool. And then somebody asked me to run for council, and I ran for council, and you elected me in 2010. You re-elected me in 2014. I'm proud to say I'm from Bothell. I love this little city. We've raised our family here. We could have moved anywhere we wanted to, but we chose this area for the school district and for the community. What I'd like to see done, one of my goals is public safety. I think we need to improve our public safety. I think that's a primary concern for anybody on the dais. I think we need to work on our infrastructure, and I think we need to work on fiscal responsibility in that order. And hopefully, if reelected, I will continue with those goals. Thank you.
Thank you. And Aaron, you'll wrap it up for us.
All right. So I want to first thank the Chamber of Commerce for putting on tonight's event. I really do appreciate it. So a little bit about me is that I was born in the Seattle area. I've spent my life in the Snoqualmie Valley up until I was in my mid-20s when I began to explore the east side. My wife, who's in the audience, and I got married in California and decided to travel around the country for a year with our 2 young daughters. We were looking for the right place to live. We were both Seattle natives. We knew the area well. Our families were here, and we felt that this was the right place to come back after seeing 41 states around the country. And at the end of the day, 3 years ago when we moved here, it was because Bothell had the ingredients of a great city. Fantastic schools, green space, and strong community bonds. The downtown Bothell is a very unique element to the city. The ability to go out after a city-changing event like the fire that we had last year and really get together and raise money for the businesses really is one of the reasons why we moved here. So my community involvement over the past 2 years, I've decided to give back to the community more. I've been working with my local PTA, working with the Citizens for North Shore Schools, and then after the Safe Streets and Sidewalks was passed in 2015, I led a task force of 12 individuals who were trying to identify sidewalk projects around the schools to make them safer. My vision for Bothell really quickly is continued economic growth, and then making sure that City Council listens to their residents. There are a lot of topics that are not being heard, and I want to make sure they are being heard. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much to all of the candidates for the introduction. We're going to begin our first series of questions. They are specific by position. The first question is going to go to position 3. Vicki, you'll start us off, and then Rosemary will have you follow up. This is the question. Many things keep Bothell unique, such as open spaces, unique housing, parks, business, and our culture. As our community continues to grow, what do you feel we should prioritize and or retain to keep that uniqueness? And you have 2 minutes.
I think that what I have really cherished in Bothell is our coming together as a community, and some of the most unique things we have is our continuing of the 4th of July parade and how it's changed over the years. One of our projects on the Landmark Board was to go back and look at documentation of it, and that was a really special project. We took that, it became part of the Bothell video, and then segued into the Then and Now book to help us celebrate our centennial. Bothell has some really special cultural events that are really unique. Our 4th of July parade, our Riverfest. How many communities can go back and recreate the boat races on the slough when they've been gone for over 30 years? I think it was almost 40 years. I want to see us come together as a community and using our spaces, our cultural common events, and expand them into inviting in our newcomers and our adjoining communities. And I think we can do that. It's part of who we are, and I want to see that flourish. Thank you.
Rosemary, I'll repeat the question. Many things keep Bothell unique, such as our open spaces, our unique housing, parks, our businesses, our culture. As our community continues to grow, what do you feel we should prioritize or retain to keep that uniqueness?
Thank you. I think it's really important when we talk about the 4th of July parade. I need to mention that I put the 4th of July parade on for 9 years. I also was chair of the organization that put that on as well, and did the haunted house in Bothell, and we did many things that were an opportunity for people to come together. I think we need to continue to do that kind of thing. I think it's important that one of my dreams is to celebrate our different cultures. I hope on Main Street we can someday have Latino Day, we can have other cultures, kind of Korean Day, develop their food, their dance, and let all of us be together. We need to actually use Main Street again and again to bring the families together. After the fire, I was called by the Greater Bothell Chamber of Commerce, and they asked for a liquor permit for them to have the event that was going to raise money for the employees and for the businesses. They had it in 24 hours. So it was my privilege to be able to do my part for helping the community to get together. My priority is to make sure that we celebrate each other together on Main Street, and it also develop something for Canyon Park and their center, and also out on Maltby Road, so that they have a walkable community where they can do their celebrations together. I think it's important for us to attract and retain small businesses. As a small business owner, I understand how difficult it is for us to be able to have different policies and procedures that interfere with our ability to do what we need to do. So I'm here for them, and I'm also here to be sure that we continue to develop Wayne Land and make that something that we all can participate in and be proud of.
Thank you. We're going to move to position 7, Aaron and Tom. Aaron, you're going to go first this time. You also have 2 minutes to answer this question. How should the city of Bothell proactively encourage the development of affordable housing?
Okay. Thank you. Affordable housing is a huge topic that I hear as I'm out doorbelling and talking to the residents of Bothell. And it's not something I think that we're going to be able to easily fix overnight. But one of the things that I'd like to see us, an ordinance I'd like to see the city pass is an ordinance on income discrimination, meaning that if you have Section 8 vouchers, you can be discriminated against when choosing a place to live. So that is one thing I'd like to do. But one of the other things I'd like to work on is that as we're building these larger complexes in the city, I'd like to make sure that we are incentivizing for lower cost, lower barrier of entry units in this, and it would be a partnership between us and the builder to ensure that it was beneficial on both sides. And then the last thing that I'd like to ensure that the city continues to do is protecting our mobile home parks. Throughout the city, we have 9 or 10 mobile home parks, and these people love living here, and I do not want to see redevelopment of mobile home parks. I'd like to see these people continue to live and thrive in our community. And with that, I'll end.
Thank you. Tom, how should the city of Bothell proactively encourage the development of affordable housing?
My son grew up here. He came back home a couple of years ago and he couldn't afford to buy a house in Bothell. Both he and his wife worked. There's something wrong there. They wanted to live here. I think we need to do everything we can. I think we need to give builders incentives to put in affordable housing, and they need to have some significant penalties if they do not. I think we need to do cluster housing. I think we can put in some cottage housings. And we're working on that with the development of the city. It's an important issue that we're going to see more and more of. When I grew up, the American dream was you get married and you buy a house and you live in a little city. And I want people to be able to have that. They should be able to have that. And we should do everything we can possibly do to help incentivize that for them.
Thank you. We're going to turn to Liam and Jeanne. You have the same question to answer. Liam, you'll go first. Again, you have 2 minutes. I like this question. If you could go back and take office 10 years ago, how would Bothell be different today? No.
So, if I could go back 10 years, how would Bothell be different? So, I could say what I like about what's happened in the last 10 years. To start with, I really like the improvements to downtown. I think we're re-energizing it, getting more people to come into downtown, visiting, staying, realizing how great a place Bothell is. They're trying to find ways to come in and live here. I think 10 years ago, some of the problems I see now, and if we could fix them 10 years ago, was parking. I think I'd be more mindful on parking, creating more parking. The current council just finally increased the requirement for parking for developments. If that could have been done earlier, I think we'd be in a better situation for our downtown for parking. Reaching out and embracing Canyon Park. There's so much 10 years ago just focus on downtown. I feel that Snohomish County and Canyon Park hasn't had as much emphasis put on it, or much if any on there. So I'd really try to bring Snohomish County more into Bothell and have more of a united one Bothell, even though we're straddling the 2 county lines and we get funding from different sides. I think it's a challenge, but I think that's what we need to strive for. Thanks.
Do you need me to repeat the question, Jeanne, or you got it?
Please, no,
Okay.
repeat the question.
I have to make sure I've got the right page. If you could go back and take office 10 years ago, how would Bothell be different today?
Okay, so who do I hug for this question? So how would it be different? Well, 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, we were down here complaining that there were a few voices that were saying there's not enough parking. And I wish that had been changed and we had been listened to on that. We wouldn't be facing that problem. Also, downtown needed revitalization. It got a little enthusiastic. And the what I would change now would be I would not be zoning for 4,000 more people than the Growth Management Act was requiring of us. Just to put that in literal terms, 4,000 more people in King County is equivalent to, what did I come up with, 16 Six Oaks buildings. So I would have brought that number down. I also would have brought building height down. And then I also would have encouraged smaller homes so that people could afford them. And also, well, I love that Canyon Park is, they've got PCC there, but I would love to see Canyon Park, and that is going to be happening. But I would love to see Canyon Park have been given more attention to become a core kind of community gathering area. And, someday maybe we'll have a regional snow isle library will come down there, or there's a lot of things, but 10 years ago it would have been fun to get a project like that going. So basically that's the first things that come to mind.
Great. Thank you both. That concludes the first series of questions. We're going to start the second series of questions. You also have 2 minutes to respond to these, and we are going to go back to Tom and Aaron. You'll begin us with this one, and Tom, you'll go first this time. I think Jeanne and Liam saw the question lists because you both referenced this in your responses. And the question is, what do you envision as the future of Canyon Park and the development in that area? What do you envision as the future of Canyon Park and the development in that area?
I see Canyon Park growing into an urban growth area. That's hopefully is what we have in mind. I see more businesses coming in. I see more residents going in. I see some light industry going in there. I see more transit coming in through there. And we need to work with Snohomish County to try to get some funding to help with all this. It's a wonderful little community up there in Canyon Park, and it hasn't scratched the surface as far as I'm concerned yet. Unfortunately, we're probably going to lose Country Village, and that's going to be sad for all the citizens of Bothell, but that's growth. We had no control over that. The people that owned it needed to sell it, and so be it. That's their right. What's going to go in its place? Hopefully a lot of small businesses. I'd love to see a little farmer's market go up in that area, where people can bring in their wares from all over, and the farmers can bring in their food in the summertime. So Canyon Park is going to be growing into the second big section of the city of Bothell. And hopefully with a little direction, it'll turn out to be a very nice section with walkability to businesses, with the businesses there, and with the residents there.
Thank you. Aaron, what do you envision as the future of Canyon Park and the development in that area?
Thank you. So I think Canyon Park has a lot of potential. It's a great area right now with the large commercial businesses, but I'd like to see multi-use commercial spaces come in there. Maybe on the first floor we could have some incubator space for small startup businesses, small 1-2 person businesses who just need a small shop to get started on. I think Kenmore has a great example of an incubator along the Bothell Everett Highway, and I'd love to see something like that come to Canyon Park. As part of that development plan, though, that development should be transit-oriented. And what I mean by that is multi-story apartments, and on the ground floor would be that incubator or commercial space. And we could definitely build it into a village, a gathering place in itself, with buses that would frequently run both to downtown Seattle, Everett, as well as hopefully downtown Bothell and Cascadia/UW Bothell. The last thing that I'd like to see done for Canyon Park is the park and ride. I think the Canyon Park and Ride is, it's an asphalt parking lot, and there's a lot of potential to put a multi-story park and ride in there. Maybe put some affordable housing up above, which would be great for the people who live there, because then they could just walk to catch transit to where they need to go. That's my vision for Canyon Park.
Great, thank you. We're going to move to Jeanne and Liam. Jeanne, you'll go first this time. Again, you have 2 minutes. What can the city of Bothell do to encourage development in some of the older or vacant buildings in the city? And should this include any adjustments to traffic impact fees? I'm going to read that one again because of the two parts. What can the city of Bothell do to encourage development in some of the older or vacant buildings in the city? And should this include any adjustments to traffic impact fees? No worries.
Well, traffic impact fees is a hot button. And so are there adjustments to that? If you're talking about downtown, or you're talking about Main Street and the older buildings there, that's going to be a hard, I would think a hard sell for the other existing businesses. So we would need them on board on what they would like to see on the impact fees. Basically Main Street is covered for. It's going to be set for our children and probably their children. As far as revitalizing the older buildings and development there, anything that we can do to encourage that. We already have a great start with one of the businesses that is unearthing and unmasking the cosmetic, the classic nature of downtown Bothell. Anything that we can do to encourage an architectural design standard that fosters and feeds that older building downtown is great. But as far as encouraging development, the only other thing that comes to mind is we've laid the groundwork for a great Main Street, and if we can expedite and assist in any permitting and being clear on what those permit options are for businesses coming in. The Chamber of Commerce is a great brain trust, I'm finding, and I know that they would also come alongside in helping new businesses get their footing. But as far as the city, we're there to help them access the things that they need to get going.
Thank you. Liam, what can the city of Bothell do to encourage development in some of the older or vacant buildings in the city? And should this include any adjustments to traffic impact fees?
So I would say we should encourage the reuse or modifications of vacant buildings, historic buildings. As part of the Landmark Preservation Board, I think it's important to save our history and the fabric of our neighborhoods, our downtown, Main Street. I like the Mercantile building. They're using the outside form of it. They're preserving the history. You can still recognize what it is. It starts discussions and stories and leads to people asking and learning about it. But you still get increased use out of it. You get the benefits of a new building, better, efficient uses out of the building. So as far as the adjustment to impact fees, I think it'd be definitely something I'd be open to. I think for the right circumstances, when you're trading off preserving these buildings, preserving the history, I think it's worth it. And a lot of times these impact fees can really discourage the change of use or reusing these buildings. So I think whatever we can do, maybe not whatever we can do, but I think we should be reasonable in trying to utilize as much of our history and older buildings that we can. So thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move to position 3, Rosemary and Vicki. Rosemary, you'll go first. 2 minutes. The probable loss of Country Village will impact tourism in the city. What should the city of Bothell do to encourage and promote greater tourism?
Thank you. Country Village will be a great loss, and you'll never build another village like it. Unfortunately, most of the people that are there can't afford to be anywhere near Bothell or even in the Snohomish County because the rents are so much higher. So I think what we'll see at Country Village is multi-level buildings, apartments, and then down below boutique shops. So it's important that we do attract new businesses to that area. I think it's important that we consider ourselves, Canyon Park needs to be the village, and we start to look at that. If you look at Totem Lake and see what they're doing there, you can actually see that we can develop different villages that will be someplace for people to gather. I know on Main Street, when you talk about that, you talk about what we'll do with those buildings. You know, if you take some traffic impact fees and you kind of make some trade-offs, we need to have a vision of what we would like to see in Bothell now. We need a grocery store. You think of all these apartments and all the people, and there's not a grocery store within about a mile or maybe a half a mile. We still need to clean up that site down on Bothell Way and put a boutique grocery store in there. I think it's important as we lose Country Village to remember that each of our areas need to be that village, whether it's Bothell, Main Street, Canyon Park, or out in Maltby area.
Thank you. Vicki, the probable loss of Country Village will impact tourism in the city. What should the city of Bothell do to encourage and promote greater tourism?
Well, first excuse me for a second. First, I want to remind people that we really don't have any control over private property. So the loss of Country Village is a deep hurt to a lot of us, but that is something that can happen anytime. We did an assessment of the property in the middle 90s on whether we could do a historic district. There was only one house there that had any significance to the city of Bothell that met any criteria on a register, which is very unfortunate. So that said, I do agree with Rosemary that as you go forward and develop village concepts, whether we do cluster housing there with small village retail, that's a possibility. We don't know, no plans have been brought forward in a master plan. So if there is any possibility of that happening, then I want to encourage our community to get out there and speak to it. That said, we're losing a prime, very important gathering place for a number of cultural South Snohomish County events, and we don't have anywhere else. So what are we going to do? Maltby is not in our planning area. That's not part of our city or our planning area. We come up to the edge of it, possibly in the future, who knows? But we have no control over that. So we need to really look at how we want to master plan our Snohomish County Canyon Park area. Provide a town center and provide gathering places and open spaces for our public market that we're going to lose. We've had an existing one there for years. What are we going to do? I think as a community, we need to come together and agree on that and work with it on our upcoming Canyon Park master planning. Thanks.
Great, thank you. We are going to switch gears a little bit, and we are going to go to a question that was submitted by our community. This is a question that every candidate will get to answer, and you'll have 1 minute. We're going to start, Jeanne, with you, and we're going to go in a row down the panel that way. King County has proposed the creation of safe injection sites for intravenous drug users. Do you support safe injection sites? Should the city of Bothell consider allowing them in our community?
That's a big question for 1 minute. Safe injection sites comes loaded with a lot of baggage, and I think part of the reason why Bothell is being asked to consider this is that Seattle has a huge problem, and asking our community and our police to add that to what they're already doing with the opioid abuse here problem, to manage yet another component of illegal drugs is very, very difficult. So my major objective is get the life jacket on Bothell, take care of, find solutions and not bandages. And once you convince me that it's a solution and not a bandage, then I'm on board.
Thank you. Liam.
So I believe safe injection sites, according to scientific evidence, are effective in treating people's addictions, their health issues here. But as far as Bothell, I don't believe it's proper for Bothell to have one at this point. I don't think we should be the pioneering city. I don't think our opioid problem is as great as other areas in Snohomish and in King County. So I think there's other cities, other regions within the counties that would be better locations to try and start this program within the state and really learn how to be effective with it. So currently, no, I don't think Bothell should have a safe injection site.
Thank you. Rosemary.
Thank you. As a nurse, I want to just make the comment that we have a public health crisis here, and we have people that really need our services. And when you talk about a safe injection site, I think you have to look at your hospitals. And hospitals are located all around the state. Their access is quite accessible from the public. They're the place where you take people who are having health problems. They can also deal with the drug addiction. They can deal with helping people turn their life around and live a healthy life. I think our hospitals ought to be the places where we have a safe injection site.
Thank you. Vicki?
I kind of agree with what's been said, but I want to bring out another point. As a former healthcare professional, I believe rather passionately that we need to treat this. It is a serious public health epidemic in our nation and in our community too. However, the best place for the services for public health are at the hospitals. And we do not happen to have a hospital in our community. We also straddle 2 counties, and it is really difficult to even consider trying to provide services on one side of our city for our residents without providing those services for the other side of our city. And public health and other social services professionals have already said that this is not an appropriate thing for Bothell, and I defer to them.
Thank you. Tom?
Well, I don't think that we ever were considered as a site. We're up in the north corner of the county. We have no facilities close to that will help out, and that is the hospitals, like everybody's been saying. I think what we're dealing with is an epidemic, and I think usually with epidemics, we have doctors that usually come up with the treatments for those. More people are dying from opioid addiction and deaths than are in car accidents nowadays. That's a lot. Car accidents used to be one of the leading causes of death, and now it's opioid. I think politicians probably should not make this decision, but the mental health professionals and the medical professionals that we have in our county.
And Aaron?
Everybody up here pretty much said what I was going to say. So I'll quickly add and say that I personally do not support a safe injection site in the city of Bothell. But I also do not support a ban on a safe injection site in the city of Bothell. I believe that this is a public health decision, not a political decision, as Tom said. You know, when I was here this week listening to the community forum on opioid addiction, I mean, listening to Ben, who has went through a number of treatment rounds, it's a scary, scary thing. And the thing that scares me the most, the more I read about it, is that anyone can fall into that trap. And we need to help these people and not put them into the shadows. So that's where I stand on the issue. I don't want to bring a site here, but I don't want to close the door on one.
All right. Thank you all. Okay, again, time to shift gears. I want you to get your yes, no cards ready. Everybody good? All right. We have 10 of these. It's my favorite part of the night. There's a richness in a community where people can afford to both live and work. Do you believe Bothell currently offers a balance of affordable housing to support this concept? Okay. Thank you.
What were our answers?
We can do that. There were 5 no's and 1 yes. And I invite you to go back and look at the videotape to see who the odd person out was. Is the city of Bothell financially healthy? There are 4 yeses and 2 nos. Should the city of Bothell provide additional traffic calming measures in our neighborhoods? Calming. So a traffic calming measure are devices that help slow down traffic. Let's keep them up for a minute. That's final answers. We have 4 yeses and 2 nos. Should the city of Bothell provide more sidewalks? Yes, across the board. Is there an opioid epidemic in Bothell? Yes, across the board. If you had to vote today, would you support the UW Bothell and Cascadia Campus Master Plan as currently proposed? We didn't give a maybe card. We have, I think we have 3 yeses, 2 nos, and a maybe. All right. Maybe a better question is, have you read the University of Washington, Bothell, Cascadia? I'm just kidding. I'm not asking that question yet. We'll get back to that one. Personally important. Okay. Should the city of Bothell fund the Riverfest Festival? 2 no's and 4 yeses. Are you a proponent of any additional business taxation within the city as a means of offsetting city budget shortfalls? No, across the board. Should the city of Bothell enforce a retail-only requirement on Main Street? I'll repeat it, but there are 4 no's and 2 yeses. Should the city of Bothell enforce a retail-only requirement on Main Street? And this is the last one, probably the most detailed, so I just ask you to listen carefully. Will the Seahawks make it to the Super Bowl this year? And yes, across the board. All right. Thanks very much. Always my favorite part of the night. We're going to return to our questions that we received from the community now. Again, we'll have 1 minute to answer these questions. We're going to go in reverse order this time. Aaron, you'll begin with this question. And I'm being serious at this time. This question actually has 2 parts. I understand that 60 seconds is a tight time frame to answer it. So I'm going to actually give you just a minute to think about the answer before I ask you to go ahead with your answer. What are the 2 most pressing issues facing Bothell businesses today? And what are the 2 most pressing issues facing Bothell residents today? So we're asking you to come up with 4 issues. The 2 most pressing that affect business, and the 2 most pressing that affect residents. And Aaron, take your time, and when you're ready to answer, go ahead and begin.
All right, thank you. So the 2 most pressing issues facing Bothell residents today, I heard it every time I was on someone's door: roads, infrastructure. Everybody wakes up, sit in traffic, and it is something that everybody here feels on a daily basis in some form or fashion. And then the second thing is taxation. I think there's a lot of tax fatigue going on in the city right now, and some way around that. For businesses, attracting customers to come to Bothell to use businesses that are here. And then for the businesses specifically around the downtown Bothell area, I would have to say parking. And the most interesting thing for me about that real quick is that some businesses want restrictions and some businesses don't. And I really, as a community, we need to come together to find an answer for that.
Thank you. Tom.
Well, he stole my answers, so I think for the businesses, accessibility, right now there are a lot of people having a hard time getting into the city and going to the restaurant that they want to go to. I think a lot of people are having a hard time parking. and going to that restaurant or going to that business or going to that brand new furniture store that they really want to see because the old one left and we got a new one now. As far as the citizens, I would have to say actually public safety. Our fire department has increased their call volumes by over 25% in the last couple of years with no increase in staffing. So I think we need to look at that also.
Vicki?
I'm going to start with the residents, with the doorbelling, traffic in a word. And mostly it was particularly in Snohomish County where it has just been overwhelmingly increased from our planning area coming as drive-throughs through Queensboro, through the neighborhood around Skyview. Anyway, I agree also with taxation fatigue. That's what I heard directly from residents, both sides. Businesses, traffic. We have a lot of people out in Canyon Park who try to get to work, try to return home from work. They deal with the traffic too, whether they live in Bothell or not. And I have to agree with public safety, but I'm going to go a little bit more on the public safety than the fire side because our budgets have been reduced and we need to restore those budgets to full strength.
Thank you.
you.
Rosemary?
Thank you. We've had for the Bothell residents, we've had the largest tax increase in the past 2 years than we have had previously, and I would like to know what programs that those tax increases are actually funding. Also, I think it's really critical that we don't have our first responders, who are our fire department people, having to compete against money in the operating budget for parks and for other social service needs. So there is an answer to that, and I think it's going to take a consolidation, and we need to work toward that. On our businesses, we got to open up Main Street. We're just killing those small businesses right now with the fact that no one can get to them, and they are having a hard time. We were promised by Thanksgiving, that's not going to happen. Also, for businesses, the impact fees need to be looked at. It's very serious for them to be able to change over if they have to look at the impact fees, so we need to look at those as well.
Thank you. Liam?
All right, so I'll start out with business. I think these two really go hand in glove. I think the parking, people want to come in, spend time, eat, shop in Bothell, but it's challenging to find the parking. I like that the City Hall created this parking and it's open after hours until late hours. That's where I parked tonight. And then also the traffic. You can't get in here to park. So it's challenging to get in here, so you want to go to somewhere that you can. And this one overlaps with residents, as you know, everyone is saying in doorbelling. You know, that was one of the top issues that everyone talks about. It's what you feel, it's traffic. You're just sitting in your car thinking about traffic. And then the other thing I heard really doorbelling was for some of the older citizens is property taxes. They have their houses paid off and they have fixed incomes and they're just constantly, you know, prices of houses are going up.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Jeanne?
I'm going to sound like a broken record here. Most pressing issues are going to be based on what I heard out doorbelling and talking with different businesses. For businesses, it's parking and it's traffic. And if you can't park, you don't have business. And I think the campuses, both Cascadia and U of W Bothell, have a student head count that's over 5,000 students that are enrolled. Those students are, at the end of the day or the middle of the day, are going to beat a path out of Dodge because they've got to get ahead of the traffic. So traffic is very impactful for businesses and parking, and then residents. Traffic, and obviously 405 is part of that component, and taxes. We have people who are seriously hurting based on the tax load, and I don't know how we can soften it here within the city of Bothell, but anything that we can do to chip away at it and lighten a little bit of the load for our people is a good thing.
All right. Thank you. We're going to go to our third question from the community, and every candidate has alluded to this, so we're going to, and it regards parking. So we're going to try to dive a little more in detail about the solutions that you might consider for the parking dilemma that the city faces. So parking in downtown Bothell is very challenging. Some of the contributing factors, as many of you have mentioned, a large increase in apartments, retail, and restaurants, overflow from the park and ride, overflow from the campus, and sometimes during the day when the City Hall parking lot is full, there's overflow there. What two specific things do you believe the City of Bothell should do to implement, change, or address this challenge? What two specific things should the City of Bothell do to address the challenge? So we're going to work from the inside out on this. Vicki and Rosemary will go first, then Tom and Liam, and then Aaron and Jeanne. And Vicki, I'll give you the same opportunity as I did Aaron. Take a moment, and when you're ready, go ahead and begin, and you have 1 minute for this. When you're ready.
Two specific things that address parking and I'm going to say inner city transport. I believe that we really need to look at an inner city shuttle service. But it's going to be even more critical as we go forward with Canyon Park being a city center. It would also facilitate transportation for a number of our seniors, especially if we could do an on-call basis, which is provided in other communities this size. The other thing is that the council has addressed the numbers of parking now required for residential development going forward. It does not address what is being built, and we can't do anything about that because we can't revisit those permits. However, we can come together in working with Metro Transit authorities because they're looking at another parking
Thank you.
garage.
There we go. I got the last word in.
I got the word in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rosemary.
Thank you. One of the things we need to do in downtown Bothell is to put some parking signs up that limit the amount of time people can park. We have people from the park and rides that are filling up our streets. The businesses can't have access because they don't have any ability to have those cars move until they start parking at 9 in the morning and they're there till 5 at night. So we need to have, and I know the merchants have talked about this over and over again. In fact, they've even had a petition to put up limited parking times in the city of Bothell. We also need to do a regional plan. We've been doing parking project by project. We need a regional plan for parking so that when we do have new buildings and people coming in, we have that plan. And please do not put no parking signs on 185th when Popkini Field is playing.
Tom.
Well, I think the city learned a valuable lesson with Six Oaks, and they decreased the amount of parking that Six Oaks had to give to its customers because they were a green building. And I think that a valuable lesson was learned there. I think the number of stalls per bedroom has been increased. I think we need to encourage Sound Transit and Seattle Metro into improving the park and rides that we have. Maybe putting a second deck on them, like Aaron said, and maybe putting some affordable housing on top. But I think part of this is cultural. I think in the next few years, we're going to see a huge change. The millennials, they don't want to drive a car. They want to rent the car. They want to rent the bike. They want to just do this and that. And there's a lot of talk that most of us old folks that like to get in their car and drive to wherever they want to go, that's going to be phasing out a little bit. So I think looking at those three areas would help us out a great deal.
Liam.
Thanks. So I think local transit is a big component to this. I think during the recession, we really lost a lot of our local transit within the area. Being on the border between King County and Snohomish County, so we have Metro and community transit. that can provide transportation from both ends there. And then also, I think another option is to try and create more partnerships with existing underutilized parking lots that we might have, banks or churches that have high use periods for specific periods of times, but other times they're just left open with no parking signs, waiting for those high use periods.
Aaron?
I think Tom hit a very valid point. I mean, Bothell is a suburban city, not an urban city, so we need to ensure that there's enough parking to support a suburban lifestyle. When I was out doorbelling, I was reminded of something from the 90s about Bothell, which is there used to be community buses or bus lines that would run up and down 104th. This lovely old woman I talked to for a very long time indicated that she used to walk out to 104th, catch the bus to downtown Bothell, and enjoy downtown Bothell. And now when I look at the city, I see that we have the makings of greatness. We have UW, Cascadia, downtown Bothell, and Canyon Park. Wouldn't it be great to have a community bus that circulates all the time between those three areas? And the last thing is, and this was really quick before you put up the sign, is we need, I know Sound Transit and UW Cascadia are looking at parking structures. We need to get one downtown so that we can use it for both park and ride during the day and entertainment at night.
Thank you. Oh, and Jeanne.
Could you repeat the question?
I sure can.
Thank you.
Parking in downtown Bothell is challenging. There are a number of things that contribute to that: the overflow from Park and Ride, the campus, the city hall, all of the new apartments. What are two specific things you would do to address that challenge?
Okay, so one specific thing that I would do is continue meeting with Sound Transit and being at the table for advocating for the need for transit and parking. I have heard that Sound Transit is backpedaling on creating park and rides for our area. That makes me hotter than a hornet, because I added up Brickyard Road, Kaysner Way, and Canyon Park parking spaces, and all of those together are 200 spaces less than what Mount Lake Terrace has and half the spaces of what Linwood has. So we need to press for park and ride. We need to find areas like churches that will allow us to bridge the gap in between, and then no more compromises on providing parking for any new construction. Everybody has to own a piece of this.
Right, thank you. We are now going to return for a couple of rounds of position-specific questions. These are not all candidate questions. We are also going to return to the 2-minute answer option. We're going to start on the right side with Jeanne and Liam. Again, you'll have 2 minutes to respond. How can the city of Bothell play an active role with citing the Sound Transit 3 parking garage and the route of new bus rapid transit? I think I heard that mentioned in the last 5 minutes. How can the city of Bothell play an active role with the siting of the Sound Transit 3 parking garage and the route of new bus rapid transit? Jeanne, you're going to get to go first on this.
I don't know how to add to that.
If you don't, why don't you just reiterate what you just said? It was very close to.
Was it pretty close?
Yeah.
Well, we need to be at the table advocating for park and rides, and we need to make a lot of noise. I think to add on to that, is that if we were to link arms with Kenmore and Woodinville, because they are also feeling this, that I think that there's strength in numbers. Kenmore also needs a park and ride. Towards Woodinville, they need a park and ride. And that if we form a coalition and get that steely look, Mom, don't cross this line, this needs to be done, I think that we can make some changes happen, but we have to be no nonsense and bringing solutions for our community. We've been hurting and we've been taking it in the chops for far too long.
Liam?
All right, so playing a little bit off of what Jeanne said here, I think we have to keep after Sound Transit to make and encourage them to keep their promises for ST3. We all voted for that. I think we're all starting to see the RTA taxes on our tabs coming up due. So we have to make that promises stick here. As far as Bothell, I think they should really take a lead in the project for preliminary engineering for siting where the parking structures should go. Bothell really has the knowledge and the history for how the local area works. Once it comes to final design, Sound Transit can be the lead agency on that, but as far as siting it, I think if we can do the partnership where Bothell, the city, leads that, that would be the best model I can imagine for it.
Thank you. For Vicki and Rosemary, Vicki, you'll go first on this. Can you have 2 minutes to answer the question? It's a different question. What are the next steps for Bothell in developing the Wayne Golf Course and the North Creek Forest?
For both projects, it's going to be doing a public master planning sessions. And as soon as the purchase of Wayne Golf Course is finished this year, the plans are for the master planning community-based meetings will start. And it's going to be very important that we get as much public input into that process for Wayne Golf Course so we can maximize the best uses for that while we're preserving the open space and the sensitive environment of the river, which is really, really important. It's very important also because we now control as a city our river from one part of our city border to the other, and that puts us in an extremely enviable position, but a very important and sensitive position in terms of doing a stellar job of it. Now, with the forest, the master planning, I don't believe it's been scheduled, and I can't speak to that, but I know that the committee, I've talked to a few people, are looking at their interpretive center, possibly being able to retain one of the houses down there. People are actively already on board looking at how best to use this property. So there's already a group in place to start this process. That property will needs to be master planned in terms of providing the trails, starting to deal with cleaning up the woods, frankly, getting in and taking care of plants, noxious plants, and things that don't belong there. So there's a long road on that. We also have to look forward to dealing with the Shelton View Forest.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Rosemary, what are the next steps for Bothell in developing the Wayne Golf Course and North Creek Forest?
So I think, first of all, we have to look at who has made this investment in Wayne Golf Course. At this point in time, the state of Washington, King County, Forterra, and the city of Bothell have all made a distinct investment in purchasing this land. And I think that we need to pull people together to get public input, but also be sensitive to the fact that those investors need to have a voice as well. I think it's important that we look at the fact that for future generations, we retain a very large environmental, economically advisable, I guess I'd say advisable, way to maintain Wayne Golf Course. This is not going to be easy. This also is going to have to be part of the plan. How do you finish obtaining it and paying for it? What should the investors have to say? What is the public input, and how do you continue to support the park that we have and the open space? On North Creek Forest, I'm really pleased to know that the University of Washington and our school districts are also right now doing educational programs there. And I think it's really important that we think about outdoor education, having our students from both our colleges and universities and from our high schools and elementary schools do more STEM programs. So science, technology, engineering, and math being done in our own parks and open spaces.
Thank you. We'll now move to position 7. Tom, you'll go first with this question. Again, you have 2 minutes. At what point is there too much growth in this suburban city? And how does the city regulate that growth?
At what point is there too much growth in the city? Well, people are saying right now we have too much growth in the city. I think we're mandated by the Growth Management Act that we're going to have to have so many people by this amount of time. I think we're working on that. I think the way that we're going about it is the right way, to where we're developing the downtown. We're trying to make that walkable. We want to put in affordable housing. Where do we put in the affordable housing? I'd like to see it up in Canyon Park. I'd like to see it up in Country Village. I'd like to see it down here in downtown. When is there going to be too much growth? I can't answer that. I think we're mandated by laws and by regulations, and we try to follow those mandates. But at what point in time are we going to have too many people here? You know, like I said, I moved here, there was 8,000 people. There's 46,000 people here now. I'd say now, but that's not the answer.
Aaron, at what point is there too much growth in this suburban city, and how might the city regulate that growth?
So I think the hardest part with regulating growth is the Growth Management Act. I mean, we can't simply shut our doors and not allow anyone else to come into our city. But I think it's important that if you do want to come into our city, that you help pay for the infrastructure that you are adding on to or using beyond the smaller town that we used to be. So I think it's really important that new growth will pay for growth, pay for the infrastructure, the roads, the sewers, parks, green space. And I think we also need to look at, more clustering, smaller houses, and more retaining of green space. As a new resident myself, in the past 4 years, I moved to Bothell because of the trees. I think it's beautiful here, and the last thing I want is for a developer to come in and clear cut down an entire native woods that we have. So let's build smaller houses, let's retain portions of the beauty, and let's really make this a great place to live. And more importantly, let's make sure that people are paying for the roads, the sewers, and the other public safety, the other items of a great city that we are. I'd love to close the doors, but I just don't think that's possible. And actually, I wouldn't want to close the doors, but I'm just saying, I think, you can't close the door. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, thank you. We have the next series of questions. Again, these are position-specific questions, but each one of these questions has to do with an asset in our community called the University of Washington Bothell and Cascadia College. So each question will relate to the campus somehow. We're going to start, these are 2-minute questions. We are going to start, no break for you two on the end. Tom, you'll go first on this one. Legislative funding for the campus has diminished dramatically. How can the city of Bothell step up to support the campus?
Legislative funding has diminished because all funding has diminished recently. The city of Bothell will try to help the University of Washington and Bothell Cascadia any way that they possibly can. I don't know if we have the assets to help fiscally help you out. I don't think we do at this point in time. I don't know. I really don't know on this one. That's a tough question. I'm not sure. Okay?
Aaron.
It is a tough question. I'll definitely agree. This is not an easy question. Right now, the capital budget is being held hostage in Olympia by our Senate and actually, I believe it's just the Senate at this point. The House already passed it, and I know that's hurting schools and the university in terms of being able to build those capital projects that are needed. So, as a city council member, I'm not quite sure how I could help you, but I would be reaching out to our state legislators, trying to get them to finalize a capital funding deal, because it's not only hurting you, but it's also hurting the city of Bothell. The next thing I'll say is, you asked a question during the yes/no round about Bothell being financially solid, and it's a hard question. I think Bothell is in a good place. We're not in a great place, so I'm not sure how much the city of Bothell could financially support the UW. UW Cascadia, sorry.
No worries.
But we definitely do, because I think having that campus here is a fantastic asset. And so we need to work together to bring more students into it. I just don't know if we have the financial checkbook to support that as a city. So we will work with the city in some, or work with the campus in some non-financial way, but we would love to still encourage growth in the UW Bothell Cascadia campus.
To help make this easy for all candidates, it's 2 institutions and 1 campus. So if you want the overarching word, we just call it the campus. We know that you're meaning both the university and the community college. No worries about that. Position 3, Rosemary and Vicki. Rosemary, you'll go first on this one. The campus currently serves over 10,000 students, but is often considered an island within the city. How could the city partner to change that?
I think what's really important is something that I have always imagined, and as part of the plan, the comprehensive plan, is to create a boulevard from the University of Washington, Bothell Cascadia Community College to Main Street, to the main part of Bothell. I also think it's important that we look at renting bicycles so that our young people can jump on a bike at lunchtime and come downtown. You know, this is something happening in many cities around us, and we need to consider this as well. I think that we know that we need more public meetings. I kind of watched at sometimes when the university or Cascadia had public meetings at McMenamin's. So I think the public wants to be educated. I think they would love to hear from the professors, and that would create kind of a bond between the citizens of Bothell and the campus.
Vicki?
I was on the Downtown Revitalization Committee when we were looking initially at strong ties between the campus that was coming in and starting to grow and the downtown. And there were a number of ideas put forth. I don't recall a boulevard, but we were looking at stronger ties. One of the main ones was, frankly, completing the sidewalks between the campus and the downtown and widening them so people could actually walk between the 2 spaces. And Jeanne knows full well up in her neighborhood, those sidewalks are still not there. So this is a really critical thing. I'd also suggest that we make maybe some of our monies that have come in from the sidewalks and crosswalks levy should be dedicated to facilitating preambulation from the university. They're not our young kids we're trying to get across the streets, but at the same time, we have to make it safe. Again, though, we need to look at an overall connection, and that means safe bikeways and dedicated bike lanes. There are no bike lanes from the campus to the downtown. There are no complete sidewalks, except I think there might be one. No, I can't think of any that would really go through, that completely come downtown and connect. We need to do that and set it as a priority. It's also important, I like Rosemary's suggestion of bike rentals within the city. Maybe we can encourage Seattle to drop a few more of their bikes up here and they just sort of stay, because that's all by phone anyway, so they might not notice. In case somebody hasn't seen, there was a one green bicycle at the bottom of 80th for a week or 2. But these are all good ideas, but without striping the lanes, encouraging walking, we can't do it.
Liam and Jeanne. Liam, you'll go first on this one. The campus master plan is in its final phases of approval. One issue has been controversial, namely how a piece of the campus property that borders a residential neighborhood would be used. When thinking about development, how do you value the needs of business expansion with the needs of the city's residents? So I'll repeat the question. The campus master plan is in its final phases of approval. One issue has been controversial, namely how a piece of campus property that borders a residential neighborhood would be used. When thinking about development, how do you value the needs of business expansion with the needs of the city's residents?
So I think the campus has done a good job of this so far. They have come out with different iterations of the plan. The public has seen these plans, they've given their comments. The campus has responded to those. Some of them have been tougher than others to incorporate, to modify the master plan, but they keep moving closer and closer to that win-win situation for both the campus and the residential neighborhood. Doorbelling there, I spoke with some of the neighbors that live right on that fence line with what could have been this monstrous building that would have just dwarfed that whole neighborhood. But once again, the campus was listening. They were being a good neighbor, a good partner, and really trying to change and be a part of the neighborhood and being a good steward of the education, the city, and just the whole community. So I would say they're doing a good job of it. I think there's still some ways to go. There's the trade-off on how close the building is to how tall the building is. That's still to be worked out, but I think just the communication has been key. Being transparent, being open. That's how government, public office should work. So I think they're doing a good job, and I'm happy that it's proceeding as well it is.
Jeanne, the campus master plan is in its final phases of approval. One issue has been controversial, namely how a piece of campus property that borders a residential neighborhood would be used. When thinking about development, how do you value the needs of business expansion with the needs of the city's residents?
Okay, so this is near and dear to my heart because I live on that hill, and there are people here who also live on that hill and work on that hill. And so my answer is not to paint the university in Cascadia as the bad guy here, because if you look at their master plan, it really is a thing of beauty. And to step back and take a little pressure off the campus, my hope for Bothell is that we become a hallmark of what being a good neighbor is, and how you can have different uses in a city, and everybody can function to their full capacity and still be good neighbors. We have one neighbor it's been his lifelong career is to go out and appraise properties. And he said that he observed in Bothell we used to have what's called transition zones, and we have previous city council has basically erased that. And I would like to see us return to what is called a transition zone. And it's just where you have two very different uses. Those properties that abut each other are thoughtful with each other. So if you have a bigger and heavier use of that property, it's going to be toned down because of what it sits next to. As you move further away from and into a common use, of course, it's going to get more intense. So I appreciate the planning for the campus, dialing it back. And I want the mention that Liam of height and setbacks critical for creating that buffer in which two different uses can coexist.
Thank you. So does everybody have their yes/no cards ready? We can opt to do 3 more questions at 45 seconds each, or 2 more questions at 1 minute each. All in favor of 2 questions at 1 minute? Raise your hand. Yes. All in favor of 3 questions at 45 seconds? 2 questions at 1 minute. Yes? 3 questions at 45 seconds. We're doing 2 questions. All right. Executive decision made. Inside out, Rosemary, you'll begin. How do you determine priorities given limited resources? Everybody gets 1 minute for this question. Everybody will answer the question. How do you determine priorities given limited resources?
I have dealt with that in the state senate for 24 years, and I know what it is like to have limited resources. I also experienced the downturn in the economy in the early 2000s and mid 2000s. So I think what you have to do is first you put forward what is going to give you your safe community. You have to be sure that your police and your fire and your responders can be there for the people of the community. That has to be one of your top priorities. Your second priority has to be the education of your children and the families and the safety and health of the families in your community. Those are really critical issues when you are limited. And then I think you have to work with other entities, the state, the legislatures, and your city to bring everybody together to support what you think is important, what the people of the city think is important.
Vicki, how do you prioritize given limited resources?
Our first priority is to pay the salaries of our city workers. That includes our public safety and fire people. That's 80% of our budget. That is first. Then we look at our human social services that work for critical services to our city. Education is not a part of our purpose in the city of Bothell because that's handled by the school district. But we do have the priorities of paying our city workers for their services. Thank you.
Liam.
So I'd say that really the city's values define your priorities, and from that your budget. And I think really the public safety, the sidewalks is a key component that I'd say I agree with the public safety of the fire and police, but also the public safety or just the safety of children walking to schools. I really believe in the Safe Streets and Sidewalks levy that was passed, creating the opportunity to maintain our roadways, another safety issue, as well as building and maintaining our safe routes to schools. So I think it's really our priorities are our city's values.
Tom, how do you prioritize given limited resources?
Well, I think I'll just tag on to everybody else. I think public safety is number one. Whether it be fire, whether it be police, I think that's our first job up here on the dais. I think public works would come next. People have to have water. They have to have sewers. They need to be able to get around. And then I think public health would be the next, but we don't have a whole lot to say about the public health issues. So public safety, public works, 1 and 2.
Jeanne?
Okay. First one would be safety. Fire and police come first. Then our public works of sewer and water. We got to keep the important water moving in the right direction. Salaries for our and staff, keeping our city functioning, and then from there comes the bandages. We may not be able to build new streets, but let's patch them. And then last is creativity for the non-essentials and use resources within our community for that.
And Aaron.
So I view the city as 3 main categories. The first would be public safety, fire, and police. The next would be public works, roads, sidewalks, water, sewer. Those are all the key ingredients of a great city. And the third would be community development. Where are the parks? How dense is our housing? That sort of thing. And if I was to prioritize just one thing, I'm a huge fan of an ounce of prevention. I mean, if we could just glaze is the wrong word, excuse me, but basically repave an asphalt road, it's going to save us from going back there in 10 years and having to dig it up and rebuild it from scratch. So, much to the Band-Aid thought, let's find incremental fixes to our city's major problems.
All right, thank you. We have one more question before we get to closing comments. We'll work from the outside in. Jeanne, you're going to go first on this. Again, you have 1 minute to answer this question. How will you work with others, especially those you disagree with, for the good of Bothell? How will you work with others, especially those you disagree with, for the good of Bothell?
I think that that's a very short answer is your objective is the good of Bothell. And you keep the conversation on topic of what is the good for Bothell. And then it's incidental whether or not it's people you agree with or get along with. Your objective is the good of Bothell.
Aaron?
One of the best parts about running for office is you get to know people. And Jeanne is somebody who comes from a completely different background as me. And Jeanne and I have got to know each other pretty well this election, bouncing ideas off of each other. But we don't see eye to eye on everything. And that's okay, because we're running for city council for the residents of Bothell, not for Jeanne, not for Aaron, not for Tom, not for anyone else up here. We're running for the residents of Bothell. And it's about compromise. We're going to hit those bottlenecks that we're not going to figure it out. And we're going to have to meet in the middle and find a solution that is the best for you, not for us. So that's how I feel about that.
Liam?
So working well with others that you don't always agree with for the good of Bothell. I really think the key is listening to what they say, because they have their ideas. If they're working for the good of Bothell, they have to have a kernel of truth, some passion in there. And if they do, I'll listen to them, I'll work with them, and we can find the solution to what makes the best resolution for the city of Bothell. So just listening, I think that's an art that's dying. I think we need to bring it back in local government, make sure that everyone's heard, make sure you felt that you're heard. So yeah, thank you.
Tom?
I think you have to have an open mind. I think you have to be able to listen. I think you, and every one of us up here, are representatives of the citizens of Bothell, and just that. No more, no less. That's what we're here for. So if it's good for the citizens, it's probably good for Bothell. But you can learn a lot just by listening to other people. I worked for 30 years in the fire service, and I can guarantee you there were some partners I didn't like a whole lot, but I listened to everything they had to say about the patient because that's what we were there for. So listen.
Rosemary?
Thank you. I think all voices need to be heard and they need to be valued. Everyone has their kind of voice that they want to talk about what they need and what they want. They have their fears about what this community is becoming, and you have to understand those fears. Bothell is divided now. We have grown so quickly, and there's been so many events that have changed within our city that right now there basically is a division. I think I look towards Senator Patty Murray and her work with the Republicans for No Child Left Behind to eliminate that and come up with a better answer, and also for her work on health care. If we can compromise with each other and find the best for what we need for Bothell, we will all win.
Vicki?
People are just beginning to feel listened to again, and we're seeing more people come out and putting their voice out in public and asking questions and participating, and I'm really encouraged to see that because we've missed it for over 10 years. That said, we are here to work for the community of Bothell. We have priorities. The city has priorities. They're public safety, fire, community development, but our priorities are the community's priorities. We need your voice. We know these goals, we want to work together, but we need to listen to our city and our citizens, and we need to listen to each other, and we need to hear what everyone has to say and be able to work for that. Thank you.
We're about to enter into closing comments. I'll give some instructions in just a second for that. Before we do that, on behalf of the Chamber, I very much want to thank all 6 of you for spending the evening with us to talk about your perspectives and viewpoints. It's crucial to the democratic process, so very much appreciate that, and thank you for being here tonight. Like when we asked you to do opening comments, we gave you a couple of pointers of things that we wanted to hear, and as you complete your closing comments, we also have one thing that we're interested in hearing. You'll have 2 minutes each to give closing comments. You are welcome to talk about any issue that maybe you feel you didn't explain well enough or that you wanted to comment on but the question wasn't directed at you. But no matter how you formulate your closing comment, there is one thing that we would like to hear, and that is how have you demonstrated a commitment to volunteerism in the past? How have you demonstrated a commitment to volunteerism in the past? We'd like you to add that to your closing comments. You'll have 2 minutes. Aaron, we're going to start at your end and just go down the panel, and you can begin when you're ready.
Wow, okay. Thank you. This was a tremendous experience for me, and I'm really appreciative that everyone came out tonight, both here and on the internet and on TV, to enjoy this experience with me. I want to touch on 2 things that I yes-noed on. Financial health. I actually think Bothell is in a good position, but I'd like to see a bigger buffer put in, a better safety fund for the city, because there is going to be a rainy day, and I don't want it to hurt the citizens of Bothell. So let's start saving for that rainy day. And the second is UW Bothell Master Plan. I am a big supporter of UW, of the campus growth. I am concerned about the one structure that's questionable about, it's just, you wouldn't want a 4-story house next to your 1-story house. And I'm generalizing, but I think that's something that should be considered. And I think the citizens of Bothell and the campus will work this out, and that's great. My commitment to volunteerism is an interesting story. I was a Boy Scout as a child and did it all the way through high school, and I enjoyed it. And then I found a career, and I focused on my family and my career. But now that my daughters are 6 and 8, I've decided to give back to the community. In the past 2 years, I've been very active with the PTA, and I've also been very active with the Safe Streets and Sidewalks Task Force. We had, I think, 12 meetings, 2 to 3 hours over a number of weeks, working across 12 different schools throughout the city to identify projects. And it was an amazing experience to talk about compromise, because everybody's kid's important to them. And to get 12 people in a room who love their kids, you have to find compromise. And then finally, I am running on basically a new message, a new generation of city council. I think Tom's younger than me, but I'd like to maybe say I'm younger, but I'm trying to bring some new life to the council. So, I look forward to hopefully earning your vote, and I see the red card. Good night.
Thank you. Tom?
Only emotionally younger. As far as volunteerism, I volunteered for the military in 1968, which means I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. I also did some volunteering as a volunteer firefighter in the past before I got my career path and became a firefighter paramedic. We tried an RFA, which is a regional fire authority, and we studied this for a couple of years, and it went through, and it didn't make it. And that's where you merge a number of different fire departments. Will that work in the future? Absolutely. Should it work in the future? Absolutely. But one thing it showed us is how limited and lacking our fire department was. We had some of the oldest equipment, we had some of the oldest stations, we had some of the least desirable stations, and we need to fix that. We need to fix our infrastructure. We passed the Safe Streets and Sidewalks, and we're getting a lot done with that. We're going out and we're getting a lot of mutual grant funding to where people are matching what we're doing, so we're doubling the amount of revenue and the amount of work that the citizens gave us the funding for. Fiscal responsibility, I agree with Aaron. I think the city's in a pretty good shape. But would I like to see it better? I mean, if you look at and read some of the documents out there, some people say we're into another recession is going to be coming up. And then other people say, well, they don't have all the indicators for this recession, so it may not be a recession. But I know at the last recession, we had 15% in reserve funding. And I'd like to see us get back up to that, because that really helped us go through that recession without laying off personnel. So I'd like to see us go back up to that.
Thank you. Vicki?
Thank you for the privilege of coming before you and spending some time with you to kind of go through some of these issues and let you guys see where we're at too. One thing that I just want to bring out too is that I really want to see fully funded, see us get back into a fully funded public safety and fire budget. That was something that when the fire chief talked to us, police chief talked to us a couple months ago, that I was very concerned about because they do tremendous work for our community. I want to see smart growth and smart transportation and traffic solutions applied in our neighborhoods where traffic has just become a real problem, partly because we don't have sidewalks, partly because traffic's going too fast and going through neighborhoods because of growth on in our planning area and outside our area. I want to see better environmental protection for our open spaces, for recreation and educational use there. I want to see some public-private partnerships brought in to help us pay for some of our parks since we can't seem to get a levy passed. We've got to find a way to maintain and go further on this. That'll help us on Wayne Golf Course. That'll help us possibly on some of our other potential later parks, I hope, in Snohomish County. I want to see affordable housing solutions that really work in this community. My commitment to Bothell is 25 years on the Landmark Preservation Board, being a keeper of our stories and our history. I've also spent 15 to 20, well, Jack will have to go on this, 15 to 20 years with Boy Scouts at the Mount Baker district level. And Jack and I have served as over 20 years as home group leaders for our church. My favorite, though, is I've spent a couple times in the last 5 years as a judge for the state science fair, and that's a hoot.
Thank you. Rosemary.
Thank you. Well, in closing, let me tell you that this is a motto I always follow. It was written by Margaret Mead, and it says, never doubt that a small group of committed individuals can change the world, because that's all it ever has. That is what I think is important to hear here, is that it's about your voices. It's about you as citizens in a group coming together and lobbying your state legislators and lobbying your congresspeople and saying that Bothell has these needs. You've done it before. We brought the University of Washington Bothell and Cascadia Community College here. You've done it before when we did a ramp at the University of Washington and Cascadia College. And you can do it again. As a leader, I would like to help you make that voice. When One Bothell wanted to save Wayne Golf Course, they came to my office, and I showed them as a group how they could lobby and they could actually purchase Wayne Golf Course, and they have done that because of that. My volunteerism has been serving on the guilds to bring Evergreen Hospital to where it's sited today in Kirkland for our people, 9 years of the 4th of July parade, and 12 years as the chair of the 4th of July committee. I also, as a founder of the Greater Bothell Chamber of Commerce. 10 years ago, we founded it, and JD and I wrote the bylaws. The North Shore Performing Arts Center, I'm a founder of that as well, and served with Norma Stoutenberg proudly to select the drapes, the rugs, and the furnishings at North Shore Performing Arts Center. Sorry, chair of the Bothell Downtown Management Revitalization Project, and I guess I would say I do know how to bring people together, how to get things done, and I hope to do that for the city of Bothell.
Thank you. Liam?
All right, so thank you very much for this opportunity tonight. We've certainly covered a lot of topics tonight, and over the summer, I've learned so much from the residents. Outdoor belling. My passion, part of the reason I ran, was transportation, traffic issues. That's what I do. I'm a traffic engineer, transportation engineer. But outdoor belling, I learned that there's so many more issues, although traffic is one of the big ones, but that everyone has different issues. And so I really appreciated that opportunity and the people that took the time to talk to me on their doorbell, on their doorstep. Everyone has busy lives, but the people that would spend 5-10 minutes, you know, there was a couple people that went longer and it felt longer, but it was still educational. So there's one little question that came up about UW, Bothell, and Cascadia that I just wanted to touch on. I thought there was more of a transportation answer that I wanted to add into. It also involves technology, I think it might have a possible answer to it. University of Michigan, they've started this program where they're using a 15-passenger van, autonomous vehicle that's circling the campus, providing rides, transportation for the students. So I think it's, it's cutting edge. I think it's where everyone's going in the future. But it's also cool. People that know me know that I like tech and gadgets, and this just fits right in there. And so I just had to say a little bit about it. Some of my commitment to volunteerism. I've been on the Landmark Preservation Board since 2010. I'm the current chair. I really enjoyed educating the public, sharing the history of Bothell, but especially we've done some projects over at the Red Brick Road where we have historic sculptures.
Thank you. And Jeanne.
Last but not least, well, I told you some of my volunteerism at the beginning, and there's not really a whole much to add. I am currently on the Bothell Planning Commission. Every time I've been at somebody's door, and you will know this, you hear from me that I'm firstborn, and I like to think I know everything, but I probably don't. So I'm counting on you to hold my feet to the fire. And part of me being that element of a bossy firstborn threw me into a self-appointed volunteer job of bringing our neighborhood together with, yeah, you get this, bringing our neighborhood together with, because we are a neighborhood here in downtown Bothell, bringing our neighborhood together over some rezoning when downtown Bothell was going through its rezoning process. And what transpired over the years is people get an email from me very frequently. I have a list of like 80 neighbors. They frequently get an email from me of, this is happening, this might interest you, this might concern you, I won't tell you my bias. Okay, I will tell you my bias, but if you have a different point of view, please go before City Council and let them know. And because I have been saying someone ought to fix that, here I am sitting before you. So my major concerns for Bothell are safety, are zoning. And that means, are we protecting our second growth trees and our shorelines? Are we providing affordable housing where everybody can live? Because we have a variety of people. If you make, you may not know this, but if you make under $90,000 a year, 60% of that population is severe cost burden. They cannot afford to live here. They're paying more than their monthly. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you very much. We have a couple of thank yous to say before we dismiss everyone tonight. First, I'd like the candidates to help me thank the audience members. They've spent 2 hours with us tonight, and that's a great citizenship to do that. So thank you for everybody for being here tonight. I'd like the audience to help me thank the candidates for expressing their viewpoints to us. And I'd also like everyone to help me thank the Greater Bothell Chamber of Commerce and the City of Bothell for hosting tonight. Thank you very much to them. I wish you a safe and good night.
And Dr. Eric Murray, we'd like to thank you for being such a great moderator.
Thank you very much. Good night.